I'd be the first one to have my head in a fryer if it needs changing.
I feel queasy.
Trip to Iceland at the end of the month, which I found out.
And that is not the frozen food section of your food warehouse, everyone. Welcome to the Only Chef podcast. My name is Andy Bloomer, and today we're going to be joined by Exec Chef of Smiths of Smithfield, Liam Walsh, who has the auspicious honour of having worked with me before, but also runs an incredibly successful fourth floor food offering out of Farringdon in London. Welcome, Liam. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Let's start off at the beginning. How did you end up getting into this job?
Cooking wasn't something I was ever really interested in at school. I'd never even thought about doing it as a career. I'd done okay at school academically. I was in kind of higher sets and stuff, but I'd kind of struggled with doing things in my own time, the homework, the coursework, that side of things. So I'd stayed on for sixth form for a little while, dropped out after a few months. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Got in a little bit of trouble.
We always like stories that begin with a little bit of trouble.
With my mates. So my mum was getting to the point where she'd had enough to an extent of my behaviour. Not so much my behaviour, but just not knuckling down and just not really
just regular hijinks.
Yes, hijinks.
Or do you think it was a bit more than
that? Borderline, more.
That's right.
So eventually, this one day just said to me, "You need to find a job, or you can go and live somewhere else," kind of thing.
Oh, wow. It's a pretty serious ultimatum.
Yeah. Which was probably a kick up the backside I needed at that time in my life. So I literally just found a job in the local paper, like how people used to do it.
You might need to explain for the younger viewers what a newspaper is, because it's the big thing that used to come through the mailbox.
Yeah. So they used to put job ads at the back of the newspaper. So flicking through there, and I found a job for a kitchen porter at a 5-star hotel that they were still kind of refurbishing in Reading, my hometown. And I was quite honest with the head chef on my interview about why I needed this job. And I think he kind of admired that in me, and he took me on probably earlier than the rest of the kitchen team. So the hotel was still a building site. It employed me as a kitchen porter, but I think because he knew about my situation, he just got me in early, and I was cleaning up after the builders until the kitchens were ready.
And you've been cleaning up from builders pretty much ever since?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, sounds about right. That sounds like every good hospitality job. And so that was, what, when did you, 16, 17?
Yeah, so it's around 2006, 2007, I'd say.
Solid.
Yeah, that was kind of my entry into the industry.
Yeah.
So then I was kitchen porter in the hotel.
And so you've done everything? Kitchen porter up?
In a kitchen, I'd say so, yeah. I still do kitchen portering if it needs doing today. So I'd be the first one to have my head in a fryer if it needs changing.
Something very satisfying about dropping the oil on a fryer and giving it a clean.
That's it, as long as you remember to close it again after.
Yeah, and it doesn't piss oil all over your nicely clean floor, yeah. So so your current role at Smiths, you are the exec chef?
Yep.
And there's, I think, for those of you who don't know, it's a 4-story brasserie pub, like local food haunt bar.
Yeah.
In the middle of Farringdon.
That's exactly. It's got a bit of everything, really.
Yeah.
So it's an old meat packing warehouse. So it's a really large 4-story building, kind of industrial field, like bare brick walls, open ceilings, that sort of thing. And the 4 floors kind of had their own identity. Ground floors are kind of casual bar. We do kind of burgers, breakfast, that sort of thing, all day food. First floor we use largely for private dining or workspaces. So people can just sit up there on a laptop if they need a quiet space, or we have it booked out for functions. We can do anything from canapé parties to sit-down meals, feasting menus, canapé parties. It just really depends what the client wants.
Yeah.
Second floor, the grill, is kind of our meat focused restaurant. We specialise in dry aged beef. A lot of it we butcher in house. So it's heavily meat led.
And all British farms as well.
All British grass fed farms.
Nice.
Different breeds. I think we have around 12 to 15 cuts on at any one time, including our specials. That runs alongside a small a la carte menu, again, using kind of premium British products. Then top floors are kind of is fish-led restaurant. It's has a nice roof terrace. So a bit of a lighter food offering up there. I'd say 80 to 90% of what we sell up there is seafood.
And it's a bar as well? Or is it just
it can
done?
be.
Yeah.
Less so more than it used to be. But yeah, you're more than welcome to go out there and sit on the terrace with a cocktail, have a tray of oysters, that sort of thing.
Perfect.
So I think the idea for Smiths is that you could spend the whole day there if you wanted to, from breakfast through to dinner.
But only as long as you're not doing bottomless brunch.
Yeah, no more.
Perfect. That's great. That's perfect. We'll deal with that. How long have you been at Smiths?
I think it's 8 years now, 8 or 9 years. My role's changed, so I've kind of had 2 jobs at Smiths. I started as the head chef on the rooftop restaurant. We were privately owned, and then in 2017 we were bought by Young's pub company. And after about 6 months of Young's owning Smiths, they promoted me to exec chef, and I've been doing that job ever since.
Wow, that's nice. And so the progression has been, so you started when you were 17, and you're not supposed to ask people their age, but you are how old now?
37.
There you go. So what, 20 years of work in the industry.
Yeah.
And now you're the exec chef of a 4-story building, which I would say probably is as competitive and as busy as any busy hotel restaurant offer, right?
Yeah, it is. We need to be. To be fair, we're a big place to fill. So we need to be competitive.
And how many covers?
We can do like over 2,000 during Christmas over the day.
So this Christmas just gone?
Yeah, we had a couple of 2,000 days.
I feel queasy.
Yeah, it's not all seated. That could include like a canapé party for 50 people and stuff. But
even still, canapé parties for 50 people, they make your eyeballs sweat, those ones.
It's a big operation, but I mean, it's about having the right team in place. It's not. I mean, I head up the food side of things, but I couldn't do it on my own. You need good people there.
And so, how does the structure? How does your team look?
So I'm kind of in charge of the whole back of house operation. Then we have a head chef on each floor, and then just your usual kind of kitchen structure from there. So you have head chef, sous chef, junior sous, CDPs, commies, and chef de partie, kitchen porters.
So probably a team of 10 chefs per floor with KPs, or is it slightly less than that?
So it depends on the time of year. So Christmas, we tend to use agency. Just so, because obviously we won't have the hours for people in January. We don't want to take on loads of people.
Yeah.
So we have kind of 40 plus in the kitchen through December.
Wow.
And then the rest of the year, I'd say probably 28 to 30 for the rest of the year.
That's still quite a lot of chefs.
It's a lot of chefs.
That is. Have you found that working in a kitchen environment and learning how to manage people has had to change a lot in the last like five years or so?
I not from my end. I don't think I've tried to. I think I'm kind of fair with people. I kind of appreciate people need a work-life balance, and I've always tried to give that to people where possible. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've kind of retained staff.
Really?
As we have over the years.
Because I suppose full disclosure, we have worked together before, and we were quite lucky in the space of where we were working in Smithfield that during the week, Monday to Friday, it's very busy. Saturday, Sunday, it's still busy, but not the business levels that other restaurants kind of see. So you can give people a five-day week, which is Monday to Friday, right?
Yeah, that is a benefit. I mean, we are open on Saturdays as well, the ground floor and the rooftop. So the guys who have to come in on Saturday will have Sunday, Monday off.
Yeah.
Or if you're not in on Saturday, you'll have Saturday, Sunday off.
Yeah.
Which is an obvious benefit to people and makes the job attractive to people. Also Christmas as well, we all get a bit of downtime as well. I've just had 2 weeks off myself. We've only had the ground floor open for daytimes pretty much for the last 2 weeks. So that's another benefit, I think, of working at Smiths.
Do you think that more restaurants are going to run to that method where they just take the hit on one day and be able to give 2 days off to everyone constantly?
I think it makes sense. I mean, a lot of restaurants are not going to be busy on a Monday.
Yeah.
You could employ less staff if you can guarantee the same days off to people every week. But I mean, it's very dependent on location, isn't it? If you're in the middle of Soho, then
you got to be open Sunday.
You've probably got to be open 7 days a week because you're always going to have the footfall.
But then when you write a rota, you just make sure that everyone gets a weekend off a month, right? Like it's
that's it. I mean, you just need to be fair to everyone, I think, and appreciate that people have lives outside of the business.
Do you think that's something that wasn't always considered when it was?
They're definitely not when I started out. I remember doing breakfast double shifts. I wasn't even hourly paid at that time. I think I started on like £12,000 a year salaried, and then you're doing kind of breakfast double shifts starting at 6 a.m. and then getting out of there at 11 a.m. You could end up doing like a 70, 80 hour week. You're contracted for 40 hours and didn't even get paid for it. So
the good old days was an interesting theory, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think now you see more people work towards that idea of work-life balance. And it is, I mean, people say it a lot, but you are, or we are all working when people are enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
Like, you're there, and Anthony Bourdain said, like, has that idea that you are going to attract people who are comfortable being outside of what is normal. And it's a bit abnormal to be like, oh, I'm going to work whilst everyone else is having a nice time.
Yeah.
But then at the same point, you can't run a place ignoring the fact that people have friends and family who would like to see them on a Friday evening.
I think definitely when I started, it was kind of expected, and I never questioned it. I'm like, this is part of being a chef. Like, you just have to come in if someone calls you because someone else is called in sick. You have to pick up the slack. It's not the kind of job you can catch up on tomorrow. If someone calls in sick, the doors still open at the same time. The customers who booked still come. They still need to be served, regardless of how in the shit you are in the kitchen. So it's just one of those things. But I think that the industry is kind of changing. I think definitely more focused on kind of staff well-being and ensuring people get their time off that they need and that they deserve. And at the end of the day, it'll have a better outcome for your business because you're not running on people being so tired they can barely kind of chop anything or whatever, to walk around like a zombie. And also they want to stay there as well because they feel like they get that work-life balance.
So there's two questions that come to mind after that. The first one is, do you remember the first time you ever said no to someone to coming in when you were called on like a day off or on an evening where you weren't supposed to be working? Do you ever remember the first time you said no to someone?
Honestly, can't remember a time I did.
It's strange, right?
When I was younger.
I ask a lot of people that question. It's like, when was the first time you actually said no?
Yeah.
And it does run on a lot of goodwill.
Yeah.
It's always been that way. And it builds camaraderie, but it also burns a chef or burns a human being quicker than anything else, right?
I mean, I'd have to be in hospital to call in sick. I think it'd be that bad. You just wouldn't. You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't unless like you couldn't walk or something.
And do you think there is anything that has sort of stuck with you in the last sort of 10 years that has really made you think, I don't want to either repeat that mistake or revisit that where I feel like I've either asked too much of myself or of someone else?
Again, it's down to the working thing. I think when I was young, I would literally work myself into the ground, like to the point where I even looked ill.
Yeah, there were some weeks where we all looked pretty malnourished.
And you're pasty, you've barely eaten. I think if I could do all that over again, I'd just refuse to pick up the shifts when I knew I was physically too tired to do it. So.
Yeah, because you're never the best version of yourself either, right?
No.
But you can go there, you can cook the food, you can serve it, you can deliver it, but whether it's something that you're really proud of or something that
you're potentially missing out on quality time with family and friends that you're gonna have,
and you're never gonna get that back.
Because you need to be passionate about cooking, but it's not the be all and end all, is it?
So what's keeping you motivated now?
Now, just driving Smiths forward. So Farringdon changes a lot. There's always new restaurants opening up, so there's always need to keep half an eye on the competition.
But you are next to arguably one of the best restaurants in the world as well, like 30 steps away from your left.
St John's.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is always a nice
thing to know, right? Been there a couple of times. Yeah. But there's also another steak restaurant opened just over the road, Ibai. So there's a Basque.
Oh, wow.
Basque steakhouse, looks really, really good. On my list to try it before the end of the month.
Sort of ex-dairy beef kind of stuff.
Yeah. Nice. Open charcoal grills, that sort of thing, big pulleys and stuff. It looks really cool.
Like a BDSM dungeon for steak.
Pretty much.
Great. Love it.
I saw they had a table in over December. It was some of the best chefs you can think of, like Claire Smythe, Tom Kerridge, Sat Baines. It was like the kind of table, if they walked into Smith's, I'd be walking out.
Someone else is dealing with this, I'm going to the pub. I look forward to the complaints,
Yeah, and they were all raving about it. And that's literally a 2-minute walk away from Smith's. So we need to keep on our toes, kind of push it forward, see what other people are doing. I'm not saying imitate it, but then they're doing this. What are we going to do?
Paying homage to someone is as close to giving someone the tacit approval of their work that you'll get, right?
Yeah, as long as you pay homage and you don't just rip it off and claim it as your own.
There is also that, yeah. I mean, how many people have taken, forage pine needle syrup from, what's his name, René Redzepi, or how many people have done a take on Pierre Kaufman's trotters and stuff like that? I mean,
you can. I think it's social media, isn't it? So you can. I think most chefs would take inspiration from social media, but it's one thing taking inspiration, it's another thing just ripping off someone's idea completely, isn't it? So.
Just put that on my menu, so it's my own. Yeah. What's day to day like at Smiths then?
Day to day, it's different day to day, Smith. So my average day is kind of checking in with the chefs. I'm kind of in charge of all the costings, so the financial side of things for all the kitchens, doing the recipes, the allergen information, all the HACCPs,
all the sexy stuff,
all the sexy stuff. But the idea is that then our head chefs can spend time in the kitchen and they can be developing the offer.
Yeah,
and then I can take more of the boring stuff off of them. I still have to do some boring stuff, but I do.
They get to do less boring stuff because you're prepared to do the boring stuff.
But then the business moves forward quicker. I couldn't come up with 3 different menus throughout the whole year on my own and develop it, cost it, cook it, taste it. We change our menu probably 4 or 5 times a year. Maybe not always complete menu changes, but it might be 3 or 4 dishes here, 3 or 4 dishes there. If something's in on a really short season, like asparagus, then we'll put it on for a few weeks and we'll take it back off. So I need those guys just to keep driving it, come up to me with the ideas, say, Liam, I want to put this on. I'm like, okay, we'll try it, weigh it out, cost the recipe, see if we can make a margin on it, make the tweaks that we need to make. And then,
you're not putting a truffle dish on it. £8 a portion.
No, it depends what it is. Like we can do as long as we have another dish that's super low cost that we make a massive margin on. It's about having balance. We don't aim to make the same margin on every dish. There's some dishes we lose on, like steaks. The cost of beef's gone up massively the last sort of 4 or 5 years.
that has impacted everyone, right? Because even if you're not buying imported beef, which lots of steakhouses are, you're buying beef from the UK. It is, I mean, the cost of the diesel just to get it to an abattoir means that it's 3 times the price that it was before that.
Energy prices affect the cost of literally everything. And we want to use a good quality product. And we can't charge what we need to charge essentially for it. So we do take a bit of a hit on the beef, and then we have to try and upsell
chips,
other things with it to make sure we.
You could say we all know it. Chips. They're almost 0% cost. It's fried potatoes. We love them. Do you think that the modern consumer has got a little bit more savvy about how it is that we run businesses?
I'd like to think so. It's not always
You are
evident,
an optimist,
though.
aren't
you? I mean, everyone sees their energy prices go up at home, so they have to pay more to run their house. But they don't expect to see it in a restaurant. It's like, well, our costs have gone up as well, which is why cost to consumer has to go up a little bit. It's there's only so far the restaurants can bite the bullet on that because we won't be in business at the end of the day.
I mean, I'm not going to ask you to sort of give away the actual number that the energy bill for Smiths is, even if you do or don't know.
It would make your eyes water.
I imagine that you've got 4 floors running mixed gas and electric offers. Like you've got induction, but you've got gas grills. Charcoal as well or not?
2 charcoal grills. 2 kitchens are fully gas. And we just had a new kitchen installed on the ground floor. Which is all electric. So I think Young's as a company are trying to move to electric now, to be a bit greener.
The only problem with that is that every time you tell someone that you're going to buy 2 electric fryers, you may as well buy 6 because they're all going to break at some point, right?
Well, we've had a few breakdowns, and the kitchen's only about 6 months old.
Why is it always fryers, and why is it always Saturday night?
Yeah, guaranteed.
Oh, it's just I can't. I swear is the reason why I'm going balder than I am right now is that the amount of things that break. Do you think people underestimate how much of a jack of all trades you got to be when you're in hospitality, or in a kitchen specifically?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I mentioned to you earlier, I was trying to fix a leak that was flooding the restaurant even today.
I think this is a nice moment where we should take that. This podcast very nearly didn't happen today because at about 2:00 this afternoon, Liam sends me a flurry of text messages, including 2 videos, to prove that there was a very serious flood at his restaurant, and it was, I mean, probably 3 inches of water through the front doors coming out, and you're just like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I might have to send another chef in my place. That was great. I mean, still would have done it, and it would have been great. But
it was touch and go, and we saw a few diners braving it as the water was kind of edging closer and closer to.
You called it the last meal at the Titanic. I think that's probably
kind of felt like that. Yeah, we had to get loads of tablecloths on the floor around them. It was.
I'm sure Sunlight will be very excited to have those back. Completely
it was
ruined.
A bit dramatic, but I mean, Smiths is an old building, so we have things like that happen fairly often. So that's the worst kind of leak I've experienced, even in my 8 years at Smith.
So best piece of advice for a chef right now is locate where your stopcocks are and make sure you can turn them off within a moment's notice.
And fuse boxes.
Yes. Also know where the first aid kit is.
That's it.
That's about it. And don't use a mandolin. You're going to lose a finger. Or if you do use a mandolin, no, you're going to lose a finger. Okay, well, do you think that if you were to redo any of those, like any of these problems, any of these things that happen, do you just think that, okay, yeah, it's tough, but actually I wouldn't change it up for anything?
I don't think I would. I mean, I say to everyone, you learn something everywhere you work, even if it's the best way to do something or the absolute worst way to do something. You can absolutely take something away from any experience you have in any restaurant.
Feel free to not answer this if you want, but biggest mistake you've ever made?
I can't think of anything major. All the classic ones of like pouring the stock down the sink and keeping the bones. I've done early on in my job.
Yeah, that's good.
I've absolutely hacked some fish to bits when I was trying to fillet it. I think 3 days into my first job, I sliced into my thumb. You can still see the scar.
Nice.
Had to have about a week off 3 days in. But
Good.
can't think of anything too major that's gone wrong.
My one was where we, halfway through Christmas of 2021, we almost processed automatic refunds to 90% of the diners at my last employer, which would have resulted in £100,000 being automatically refunded to people.
Yeah.
And I actually rolled around on the floor like a child having a tantrum.
Yeah,
I completely lost my biscuits.
I
was done. I was like, no, I can't. I had to just stop and sit on the floor and just think about what I'd done.
I think I'd prefer to nearly sever my thumb.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I'd rather sever it. It got to that point where I was like, oh my God, I can't actually deal with this right now. I'm just gonna throw out some rapid fire questions. Just gonna see how we get on.
Yeah, go for it.
Last time we did rapid fire questions, they took 8 minutes ago because we asked an Italian chef who was not prepared for quick fire questions. So
yeah, it took some.
Feel free to answer from the hip.
Cool.
So, favorite restaurant in London?
Morcella
Okay.
in I forget the location. It's near Farringdon, close to Smiths. Just Ben Mark's restaurant. Sister restaurant of Perilla.
Yeah.
Kind of Mediterranean themed. Small sharing plates. Just really interesting flavour combinations. Some things that are familiar, but just kind of presented in a completely different way to what
Nice.
you'd expect. Really, really good. Went there
Nice.
for my birthday.
Yeah. Make sure you all go there. What's the dish you're most proud of creating?
It's quite a simple one actually. Probably not what you'd expect. It's an ox cheek muffin that we had on the breakfast menu at Smiths for quite a long time. It's a really sticky braised ox cheek, served on English muffin, poached egg on top, and then a Marmite hollandaise, crispy onions.
You had me at ox cheek. That's
Yeah,
unreal.
I mean it just hit every level on flavour. Like didn't look like much, but I also saw a few people doing it on Instagram, which was I took as a compliment. It was
Is that would that be ugly delicious, or is it just delicious?
it was just pure dirty breakfast food.
That's brilliant. What's the one ingredient you think is underappreciated?
And I'd say fennel. I think it gets a bit of a bad rep. Everyone kind of associates it with fish, but if I use it at home, I have it with roast chicken, pork, lamb.
Yeah.
You can braise it, roast it, eat it raw in a salad. It's quite versatile, but
Yeah, that aniseed flavour is. I mean, everyone just thinks sambuca and like nice and falaraki,
it's
right?
not everyone's cup of tea, but as soon as you cook it, it kind of dumbs the flavour down slightly.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Food trend that is overrated.
Not sure if it's a trend, but I think bottomless brunch has had its day. I'm a bit over that, I think.
In the bin.
Yeah, just loads of drunk groups falling down the stairs trying to get as pissed as they can for as little money as they can, I think.
Yeah, the bottomless or free-flowing ideas certainly have caused more injuries than they have solved problems.
Depending on the venue, it's either bottomless or free-flowing.
Either way, there is going to be a lady from Essex puking down your stairs.
We did it at Smiths for quite a while, but we were kind of at the beginning of the whole bottomless thing. So we done pretty well off the back of it. We were doing a couple hundred people a week, and then all of a sudden everyone started doing it, and then business just tailed off. And then we're sick of dealing with people falling down the stairs every week, to be honest.
Well, if you will insist on having 4 floors, that's sort of your own fault, right? Okay. What's the one dish you've never been able to perfect?
Not so much a dish. We did an event in association with the Natasha Foundation.
Okay.
So we created a whole menu that was supposed to be that was allergen free. It was like 5 courses, and I wanted to do a gluten-free sourdough. So I spent absolutely weeks working on this, looking at different recipes I could find online, buying all sorts of different types of flour that you'd never heard of. and still didn't get it right, and I had to use yeast in the end.
There's just no way getting around
my
it.
gluten-free sourdough starter wasn't working. But that was weeks of development for nothing.
It's always nice when you spend weeks doing something and it still goes tits up.
Yeah, but I mean, we had people asking for the recipe for the one I made in the end with the yeast. So
because everyone,
wasn't all bad.
every gluten-free bread that I know has egg in it to be able to stabilise it, right?
Yeah, or xanthan gum. Usually. So my partner's gluten intolerant, so
Okay.
I developed gluten-free recipes at home as well as at work.
So not only are you caring, but you are a good chef as well. That's amazing. What's the most bizarre request that you've ever had from a customer?
I haven't had loads actually.
Well, we'll just give up on the question. Then.
No. I remember there was a breakfast shift at Smiths once. It was a sandwich, a bacon sandwich or sausage sandwich, and the guest wanted one slice of the sandwich toasted and the other side untoasted, which is a first and last for me. But the customer's always right, so we made it.
So we toasted their bread on one side for them. Yeah, nice. And if you weren't a chef, what would you be doing?
Probably an electrician or some kind of electrical engineer.
Not a plumber?
Well, I could have done with that today, to be fair, but unfortunately not. But I always had an interest in kind of electrics and engineering, kind of taking things apart and putting them back together again.
Fair enough. So that would have been it?
Yeah, I think so.
Liam the Sparky. Job done. Right, well, here endeth the rapid fire questions. So part of the idea here is to try and give people who are maybe starting out in the industry or finding their way in hospitality some advice, trying to give them that kind of relatable idea of what hospitality is really like.
Yeah.
And so I guess, what do you guys look for now? What do you look for when you're hiring chefs?
I think just showing a genuine interest for me goes a long way. Even if you turn up for an interview, a trial shift or whatever, you're not the greatest chef, but you're keen. You ask lots of questions. You show that you want to learn. Like, these things can be taught. Passion has to come from the person. You can't teach someone to be passionate. That has to come from them. So I think that is the number one thing that I look for when we're interviewing or trialing chefs.
And I mean, you retention-wise, you mentioned it before that you do pretty well retention-wise. I mean, longest serving chef you've got with you? Serving, like he's doing 10 to 12 for GBH or something, sorry.
Get less for murder. Probably Wyman, our pastry chef. He's must be knocking on 5 years now, I'd say. He's our head pastry chef, so he writes all the dessert menus for the whole building.
So he's one of very few chefs that rolls all between the floors.
Yeah, there's literally only me and him that work between all the floors. I mean, everyone helps each other out if they need it, but in terms of kind of development and pushing the offer forward, it's me and Wyman who look after all four.
Wowzers. And so passion, asking questions, it's sort of that slightly underrated point where people go, oh, am I supposed to ask a question? Am I going to look stupid here? But actually, you're better to look stupid and feel like you've got a good handle of it, right?
I don't think you should ever be scared. If you go to work somewhere and you ask a question, you're made to feel silly. That's not a good place to work, in my opinion. Head chefs have a responsibility to kind of develop. You're only as good as your team. So if you're going to sit there and laugh, take the piss out of someone's stupid question, then maybe the head chef's not right for the job, in my opinion.
It's a fair point. And so what's sort of advice? Because you must get asked to go and speak to kids who are at college or people who are just starting out in the industry, or maybe you don't. I could be being very generous there, but you must get asked your opinion on stuff like that. What bits of advice do you give out?
Again, ask questions, buy books, and go work at good places. I think definitely in the earlier parts of your career, just pick good restaurants and work for good chefs. Ask questions and buy books.
And for those of you who don't know what books are, they're like newspapers, but typically got more stories in them. Yeah, I think that's the books thing is interesting, right? Because I've never met a chef who isn't entirely proud of their cookbook collection.
Yeah, I go through phases. I'll buy like one a month for 6 months, and then I won't buy another book for a year.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of the recipes you can find online, but I think there's something special about having the physical copy. Reading all the forewords and the backstories behind the recipes and the restaurants, looking at the photography. It's just a nice thing to have. Reading it from cover to cover. It's.
Do you ever? I don't know if it's entirely possible nowadays, but back when it was, before Instagram and everything was food orientated, you used to have those days where you just used to put books on a table and you used to just sit there and just think, well, hang on a minute, maybe we could make that work with that. Or
I still do. I've got a couple of books that I reference from time to time.
Still
Definitely.
An analog man. Nice.
Yeah, I'm the same with music, to be fair. I've got quite a big vinyl collection now that I started in lockdown. But again, it's the same kind of principle. It's nice looking at the cover, having the physical copy, and listening to the whole thing.
Yeah.
From start to finish. I think the same can be said about cookbooks.
Nice. And do you think that there is something that still needs to be experienced? Because for younger chefs now, we're not trying to sort of force them into that 70 to 90 hour working week and feel like they are belittled and bullied into feeling a certain way. But is there something to be gained from a bit of adversity and a bit of having to ply yourself at a craft and a trade as well? It's like a careful balancing act, right?
It's finding the balance. I mean, I don't think younger people now would even I don't think younger people now would put up with being expected to work 70 hours. I think that would just be a no from the off. But then that being said, working in a kitchen is not always good fun. It has its moments, as you know.
Yeah.
There are times when people don't turn up to work, things go wrong, whatever that may be. And yes, you will probably have to work some evenings as well and some weekends. It is part of hospitality, but it's.
But then also the kind of people that you work with, when you do that, it ends up, okay, you don't necessarily want it to be like a bunch of pirates going to battle, but also those people become your best friends, right?
There is a sense of camaraderie. I mean, you spend a lot of time working closely with people. You see the same people every day. And you share the same passion. It's can be physically demanding sometimes. It kind of brings your team closer together. It's a kind of shared experience, isn't it? And it only works if people are working with each other as well. If you have you can't have people who don't work well together in the same kitchen. It's kind of like an orchestra. If one part's not playing, then the whole thing's
going to fall apart.
Kind of off, isn't it? So
you can always tell when. And it's really bad because, every kitchen, every business goes through waves of it. But you can always tell when a section isn't quite feeling right, or it's not quite, the service isn't quite going the way that you want it to do, right?
Absolutely. There's like I mentioned before, it's things do go wrong. But then there's also like a kind of sense of pride when you come out the other side of a rough service, whatever that is. And then it was rough, but the customers didn't suffer. The food went out as it should have been. You kind of dragged yourself out of the weeds of it, and there's a sense of pride in that as well. as when everything's running perfectly.
What do you tell yourself on days when it hasn't quite gone right? Because everyone expects things to be perfect constantly, and it's just not possible. It's an impossible task to expect everything to be perfect all of the time. You work hard and you aim for it, and it's striving for perfection and quality and good end results. Yeah. But when it doesn't go right, what do you tell yourself?
I mean, you can't beat yourself up. You can analyse it. Like, is there something that we could have done differently this time that would prevent that from happening? A lot of the time, no, we couldn't have. Just something's gone wrong. It was unexpected. And you just kind of pick yourself up from it and.
But then how do you, because it's really easy to focus on negative or to think about that. But then the other point is, how do you celebrate things going really well?
Usually with beers at the end of service. I think
That seems like a good, healthy way of doing things, actually. Yeah.
No, but I mean, just having happy customers. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of reviews and stuff, but I mean, our restaurant's kind of measured on reviews by the company these days as well. So that's a big part of our job as well.
Do you have an internal review system, or is it TripAdvisor and all the others that come with that?
Yeah, so we use a company that kind of groups all your reviews together from, I forget the name of it, but they will take all your reviews from all the review sites.
There's a guest satisfaction score.
And you kind of get a score that goes up and down every week. And Youngs take it quite seriously, which is fair enough, because a lot of people these days will now go straight to TripAdvisor or Google reviews.
Yeah.
Before they come to your restaurant. If they see 3 or 4 bad reviews at the top, the chances are they're not going to come, are they? So
that's a depressing thought process, but yeah, I suppose that is fair. Do you think that leaning into that has brought net positives?
Largely, but there's a certain corner of society that will... I mean, we've had people who've written a awful TripAdvisor review for whatever the reason is. You can go into their profile and see that they've only written 1 review, so they've set up a whole account with TripAdvisor just to slag you off on a review. That's the only thing they've ever done on TripAdvisor. But chances are we can fix problems if customers let us know. Like, we will knock something off your bill, we'll recook something, we'll give you a bottle of wine, and then most people leave happy if you can fix these problems as and when, and you're given a chance to. It's just the kind of keyboard warriors at home sometimes that like to give you a bash in.
But do you think we, I say we as chefs, but chefs in general maybe didn't, in previous years gone by, dealing with the customer was the preserve of the front of house.
Yeah.
The back of house, the kitchen was cooking the food and executing that. And now, obviously, you get more chefs who come and serve food out the front in the really fancy Michelin stars and, 3 AA Rosette style restaurants. But do you think now there is a better understanding of what the customer's looking for, because everyone can see it now? It's not like the front of house are just coming to you, by the way, chef, this hasn't gone right. You can see it for black and white for yourself, right?
There's no worse feeling either. If you're in an open kitchen, you can see someone kind of sending their food back.
And it just does that slow walk through the tables like this. So it just weaves its way like a sad snake. And then straight to the party, like,
oops.
Yeah.
But that...
that's the greatest undersell of a plate of food came back. Oops. Like, I like that.
No,
that's good.
Well, obviously we wouldn't be swearing because it's an open kitchen. So.
Are all your kitchens open?
No, the ground floor is open. But chances are it's too noisy down there to hear for customers to hear swearing. And then grill's fully open kitchen.
Yeah.
Which I don't mind. Ensures people are doing what they're supposed to be most of the time.
Keeping their P's and Q's to themselves.
That's it. Well, not all the time, they're chefs.
That's true.
After all.
And that does mean that chefs don't get to listen to their music quite as loud as they would like.
Definitely not during service. I mean, I'd like to have a bit of music on. Even if I'm in the office, I'll have music on.
Yeah. It's a pretty boring job otherwise, right?
Yeah, I find it helps me focus sometimes. So even in the kitchen, I think I can do more prep or whatever it might be if there's some fairly loud music on in the background.
So, worst case scenario on a day, someone's called in sick, you're putting the papers down and you're on a section?
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm needed, I'm there. Still partial to the odd shift on the Josper on the grill on a Thursday night.
What, losing your eyebrows when it's
just
when it's 900 degrees in there?
Yeah, just letting everyone know that I can still do it from time to time.
It's nice, right? It's just to prove a point.
Yeah,
just in case they think that you haven't quite got it. Then
well, I know what people used to say about exec chefs that I've worked for in the past. I just want to
Liam, by any chance, are you saying that
make sure they're not saying the same things about me. So.
I think that's like not repeating the mistakes of what you have seen before.
Yeah,
it's probably the best thing that we have all come up with collectively in an industry in the last 10 years, because you've seen all of those mistakes. You've seen quote unquote exec chefs come in off their rocker. They've had too much to drink at a boozy lunch, or they've clearly not been to bed, and you see them come to work. You're like, how are you supposed to do your job?
Yeah.
And it's sort of, it still happens, but from my perspective, it's now sort of being resigned to the dustbin of history a bit.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, if you're in a senior position, you have to lead by example.
Yeah.
It's one of the main reasons being, if I was to do that all the time, then what can I say to someone else if they turn up like that? It's
smelling like the drip tray.
Yeah, you're not going to do the best job that you can do.
No. And do you think that is something that is now becoming less of an issue? Because, I mean, there's many a evening after work where you'd sink a few pints because you want to blow off steam.
Yeah.
But it's now, we now have almost like a duty to make sure, okay, one or two, but everyone needs to be tucked up in bed at a reasonable time because you've all got to come back and do this again tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, definitely when I was younger, we could finish work and go and sink 5 or 6 pints most evenings. But yeah, one, I'm getting older, and two,
you're going to miss the last train to Hertfordshire, aren't you?
Yeah, live out in Hertfordshire, so I need to be on the last train by 12 o'clock anyway.
Is that your last train?
Yeah, it's around then.
Yeah, that's a long nighttime commute if you forget that or miss that last train.
Yeah, it is. I've had to do it before. It's an expensive taxi.
Yeah.
I think drinking culture's kind of changed generally. Maybe not so much in hospitality, not just in hospitality, should I say?
Yeah.
In terms of people don't go out and tank it as much and as often as
it's now 4 times more expensive than it ever was. Right?
I think that's largely it, isn't it?
Oh, double gin and tonic's £87.50. Oh, lovely. I'll have one, thank you. Maybe a half. Yeah. Do you think, trends-wise, customer-wise, are you seeing that there's a drop in consumption then?
Maybe not. I think people just go out less often.
Yeah.
I mean, people maybe would have gone out twice a week a few years ago. Now it's probably twice a month, I'd say. So I think that's the biggest change. I think if people still spend the money when they go out, they just go out less often.
And that is for people who are running multiple floor venues, that's an absolute killer.
It is, and that's why we have to keep evolving the offer and trying to sort of let people know that who we are, what we do, if they haven't heard of Smiths, and just keep pushing the offer forward.
So what's the future then?
The future, we'd like to get 2 rosettes on the rooftop and the grill. So both were awarded 1 rosette each last year. So next steps are to get those 2 both up onto 2 rosettes, hopefully this year.
But you are allowed to have a small humble brag that you get to go to Iceland after winning a prize for youngs as well, right?
Yeah. So we had a really, really successful Christmas. I think our biggest Christmas ever in terms of sales. And as an area for youngs, we saw the highest increase like for like compared to last year in sales. So we won a little trip to Iceland at the end of the month, which I found out.
And that is not the frozen food section of your food warehouse, everyone.
Not quite. It's
that's the place somewhere near Greenland.
That's the actual country. Yeah. Well, I hope so. Anyway, they didn't actually say that.
So you're just getting a prawn mix combo and
get a prawn
some
ring.
frozen chips. Yeah, a prawn ring. I haven't had a prawn ring in years. I don't think they're any better than they were back then.
Yeah, so that's another good thing about Youngs as a company. They run all sorts of little incentives like that. I've been to New York with them in the past as well, winning an internal cooking competition. So
what dish won it?
It was a vegan dish, actually.
Oh,
it was,
no, cut. Sorry, what? Have a word.
It was carrots cooked in beer.
Okay, I'll take it back. That sounds subjectively delicious. Yeah, sorry. It was incredibly rude of me. Sorry.
Yeah, so this will be my second trip from Young.
Now you just show
trip
it off.
outside of the country.
Yeah. And do you think that, because I mean, when we talked just before here, you had done 6 years in an independent setting with Smiths, and now you've done 6 with, or maybe less than that, either way, 6 with Youngs.
Yeah.
That slightly bigger environment, that sort of corporate culture that gives you a bit of security.
Yeah.
Thriving in it?
Yeah, I think so. And it's also the kind of training and development opportunities they offer. They're not just senior team, but they have all sorts of courses for KPs training up to commie level, commie to CDP, CDP to SU. So we put a lot of our guys from Smiths through their programs. Gives them the tools they need to kind of take that next step in their career. We've had people go from kitchen porter all the way up to sous chef, and then move on into head chef positions within the company. I think we've produced like 3 or 4 head chefs through Smiths that have then gone on to take over pubs in the wider Young's estate. So they're big on kind of developing and retaining their staff. I think there's a big push for internal promotions for kind of head chef and GM positions as well. They want kind of over 80% of their appointments to come from within the company. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, they really look after you as a company. I
Can't knock it.
Can't knock it, no.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the Only Chefs podcast.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And have a lovely day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on the Only Chefs podcast. If you've enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe, and pass it along to any other chefs who'd like to hear about how wonderful I am, how wonderful Only Chefs is. Thank you very much.
Only Chefs is the UK's leading job board built just for chefs. We connect you with top kitchens looking for talent like yours. No BS, just real opportunities to level up your career. Find your next move today at onlychefs.co.uk.